Welcome everybody to this amazing summit. We are here with our third interview today on our very first day of the Personalised Health Summit. We're so excited to be talking to so many amazing experts from all around the world and bring this amazing information towards you so that you can work towards a place of health and happiness. Today we have an amazing guest, Sophia Godkin, with us. I'm really excited to jump into conversation. But firstly, just wanted to say thank you so much for you to being here and really understanding the intent behind this summit is to provide a whole heap of information from many, many different aspects, from many, many different experts, that we can collate this information for you to decide and for you to choose and find out about yourself, to find out how unique you are, and to find out what's right for you so that you can move towards a place of health and happiness. And so a huge thank you to our major sponsors, the Ultimate Human Foundation, who is a collaboration working towards eliminating chronic pain and disease from the planet, and to PH360, who's really working to be able to provide tangible, actionable insights from epigenetics and personalised health information. So please go and check those out, ph360.me and also the Human Foundation. And the biggest thank you of everybody is to you for being here, for giving up your time and for being here actually proactive in your health and learning all this information that's here for you. So without further ado, I'd love to invite and welcome Dr. Sophia Godkin with us today. Sophia is a happiness expert. She's a holistic wellness coach and educator specialising in uniting science and human experience to illuminate our potential for unconditional happiness. She holds a master's in social ecology and a PhD in health psychology. She's with her grace and contagious joy. Sophia uplifts us to embrace and integrate all aspects of the physical, mental, emotional, social and spiritual well-being as we get to know and be ourselves. That's beautiful. Sophia, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you here. And Sophia, I'd love to just jump in and hear a little bit about you. I know a lot of listeners in the audience would love to hear a little bit about how you got to where you got to today. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and why we're having this conversation?
Sure. So where my journey really began early on in life, I remember growing up and having this sense of fear, really, because people who were close to me were developing chronic diseases, my mother as an example. And I remember having this sense that, not only was this their destiny, but it was mine as well, genetically, that this is just something that was going to happen to me later in life. And thankfully, throughout my education, I learned otherwise. I learned and became fascinated with the connection between our thoughts, emotions, and our physical health, and how wonderful this interplay is. And little by little, that really assuaged my fear, and I became, intellectually and personally very interested in how I can harness this power to help myself, my family, and everyone that I can.
That's beautiful, Sophia. And if you had to give us a bit of a background on health and health psychology, I know that's certainly an area where you spend a lot of time and have a doctorate in that area. As a lot of difficulty that people face in their lives with trying to understand more about who they are and how they can work towards a place of health and a place of happiness, you have some insights just from a psychological perspective as to how we can even start to navigate that question.
Sure. So what's really important in terms of health behaviors, health outcomes, is our mind, what I referenced earlier, our emotions and our thoughts. And, that really begins with an awareness of, where our thoughts are at any point in time, and then learning to potentially redirect those thoughts to a different point of attention, a different point of focus. And so what we see in that regard, in terms of scientific evidence, is that our thoughts, emotions are very much related to what we see in our physical body. So we see, for example, that stress is very much related to the likelihood that we'll develop chronic diseases such as cancer, diabetes, all the variety of diseases that we see very common in our world today. And similarly, and what was very fascinating to me is that aside from reducing stress, what seems to be really important is actually enhancing our capacity for positive emotions, such as happiness. And so that in itself is very much related to a reduced risk of all these chronic diseases that, again, we see so rampant in today's world that we often approach from a nutrition or exercise perspective. Both perspectives are very important. And in addition, it's important to really look at how we relate to ourselves, which really comes down to how we relate to our minds.
That's very well worded, Sophia, beautifully put. And one of the things that that's certainly getting a lot more press these days is happiness, and that's, I guess, the essence of our conversation today. It's really an interesting time where we've spent a lot on the physiology, a lot on disease, and we're trying to still work out a lot of genetics and a lot of physiology, a lot of now epigenetics and personalized health, and all these amazingly detailed scientific and medical conversations that are going on for us to try and fix problems or work out how we can head towards a state of health. When there's now a whole new line of thinking that are opening up with what we call emotions, or even how we feel, our feelings, with happiness and love and gratitude and all these sorts of things. And we're now just sort of even starting on the brink to research those, even the last few decades, but in mainstream just starting to come out now about happiness and how that can actually influence our health in some ways, shapes or forms. And I'd love to just hear a little bit from your perspective about why is happiness healthy? And do you have any sort of research or examples that you can share with us in that sort of manner?
Sure, that's a great question, Matt. So, really there are a variety of reasons why positive emotions, why happiness can be healthy, can be a health asset. And one of the ways is, physiologically, right? What we see is that the more positive emotions someone has, the more healthy their immune system is functioning. For example, I love this study and I'd love to share it with you and the audience. There's this one experimental study that invited participants into a hotel for a week's time. And as these participants, who were healthy adults, they came in, they were surveyed about, their stress levels, their happiness, and then they had a cold virus sprayed up their noses. So everyone was exposed to the cold virus. And for the next week, the researchers observed who got sick. And what they found was that those individuals who reported less stress were less likely to get sick. And individually, those who were reporting more positive emotions were also less likely to get sick. And they determined who got sick not only by asking them, but also by weighing the weight of the mucus in the tissues that they had deposited around the rooms in this hotel. So it's very fascinating. And what we see, what this means is that positive emotions are really an asset in terms of the functioning of our immune system. And we know how important our immune system functioning is to our health. We see all sorts of associations with inflammation and chronic disease. And so this is, a really important finding to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, the research that's now coming out, and that's a great example. And can you share with us a little bit more about this connection between health and happiness? It really is such an amazing time to be understanding these things, and I guess even between positive emotions and health. And that you mentioned about the immune system. Can you talk us just a little bit more? Talk us through a little bit more about some other things that may influence our health, in a broader sense or in a biochemical sense, or what sort of science do we have around that sort of conversation?
Sure. So I mentioned one of the ways that sort of health and happiness are related is through what we see in the immune system. And another way, and this is, I think, what you're asking, is what we see in terms of differences between people who show more positive emotion and those who show less is the way that they cope with stressful experiences in their lives. And what we see is that those individuals who are happier are doing more of what's known as emotion-focused coping. And what this comes down to is that people are more likely to approach and stay with, these unpleasant situations that we might encounter in our lives, rather than, running away from or avoiding or denying. And so this process of, really reflecting on a stressful experience, an unpleasant experience, and noting what it means for us. Why might we be feeling this way? What might this what might this reveal to us about ourselves? And, how might this be influencing my life? How might this be influencing how I relate to other people? So those sorts of reflections, are really driving this relationship between happiness and health. So the more we gain an awareness of how our thoughts and emotions are influencing us, the more we practice observing, the emotions that are coming up, regardless of what the emotion might be, whether it's, a so-called unpleasant emotion, fear, guilt, shame, or a positive emotion. You know, the understanding of the felt sense of this emotion is really important, because throughout the process, we learn that there's no emotion that's too big for us or too challenging. And so what ends up happening is this process of self-reflection, of awareness with regard to our emotions, becomes a health asset. Again, just like positive emotions are able to work in this way, because what we're developing isn't just an ability to survive in the face of stress, but really an ability to thrive, because we're developing resources that we can use regardless, of the situation that we might experience tomorrow, the next day, the next week.
Yeah, beautiful. And Sophia, so I mean, these concepts are so mind expanding in so many different senses, and to think about a lot of different aspects of our health and aspects of our mind, they're influenced by how much joy and laughter and happiness we're having. It really puts into perspective some of the things that we value the most in life, whether we're valuing money and success, or whether we're valuing our health and happiness, and how they correlate. So it really is an interesting conversation. And just on that note, so what are some things that actually determine our happiness? Like, what actually determines our happiness, and can we change that? Can it be altered in some sort of way?
Yes. So there are a number of things that determine our happiness, and one way that we can look at it is, what sort of percentage or portion of happiness is determined by genetics, and which is determined by other factors. And what we see in terms of research is that there is a portion of our happiness, our well-being, that can be attributed to genetics. But there's an even larger portion that is determined by factors outside of that. And, as modern science is evolving, and including the discussion of how our genes are always dynamically interacting with our environment, what we're likely to start seeing is that this proportion of happiness that's really due to factors outside of our genes, which we can also think of as the portion that's within our control that we can do something about, is likely to increase vastly. So really what we're seeing is that happiness is something that is very much within our control. There's very much we can do to act in a way, or do things in a way, that enable us to feel joy moment to moment, which is really how I think of happiness. It's our moment to moment choice that we have to experience joy, to experience those pleasant feelings, that we're really here to experience. And if not, we have this ability to stay with the experience, whatever it might be, that doesn't feel so good. And in so doing, allow it to become, a joyful one, or whatever it is that's coming next.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks. And I just love the way that you position this, Sophia. It's really such a great way that we can start to conceptualize a lot of these understandings. And just touching more on that concept of joy that you mentioned about there, and happiness. And for people who are listening at home right now, I'm sure we all go through plenty of times in our lives where we may be happy in certain contexts, and we may be sad or upset or angry in certain contexts. And where do we start? How do we actually start to change some of these the conversations in our mind, or how do we change the outcomes of our emotions? That's it. And how do we actually, where do we start for those that are at home listening in right now?
That's a great question, and one that I often wondered about. And what I would say is, what we're doing is we're taking time to get to know ourselves. And, if I was to get to know another person, what I would do is I would maybe call them and ask them to hang out, right? I would want to spend time with them. That's how I would want to get to know them. And so when we want to begin this process of really getting to know ourselves, really getting to know, what's going on inside, it's important that we take time with ourselves. And that might look like just a few moments sitting, closing our eyes. That might be taking some time to read a book, to journal, to, relate to people in a way that reveals something about ourselves if we're paying attention. There are many, many ways. And, what's beautiful is that the more we do this, the more, we begin to understand what our real wants and desires are. We begin to be able to reflect on what's true for us aside from the external circumstances that might exist. And this is really powerful because I think that what we all really want is to be accepted. And oftentimes, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to be accepted because we're acting in ways that are untrue to ourselves. So when we spend time with ourselves, we get to know ourselves better, and so we can act in accordance with who we really are, what our true needs are, what our true wants are, in relation to our strengths and our weaknesses. And again, when we observe rather than judge these things that we notice when we spend time with ourselves, it becomes less threatening. There's nothing that really has to be done to change it or to make it look like anything different. And therefore, we become less apt to need to change ourselves and to make ourselves look or feel any different as well. So I digressed a little there, but I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sophia, just in terms of, I know that you're an adjunct professor at Chapman University and you teach lots of people in these principles you're talking about. How is this received, or how is this different for everyone? I know that's really a conversation we're having this whole summit, is that it's about personalized health and personalized happiness, if you like. How is it received by many? The concepts, does everybody understand it in the same way? Does everybody see themselves in the same way? If everybody's observing themselves, does everybody see themselves in that way? Or sometimes we have different perspectives, and how can we sort of navigate, or a couple of tips that we can have to navigate around some of those things if we're finding it tough to observe ourselves in that state of mind?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. There's definitely a lot of variability in, first of all, what preferences we have for anything, including how we get to know ourselves. And that's very much related to, how effective or how likely whatever it is that we do is to produce and maintain, joy or happiness. Um, the more likely we are to do things that feel intrinsically good to us, so those things that feel natural, that just feel very inherent to us, that bring us joy, the more likely we are to repeat those things. And those are the things that through time lead to increased happiness for us. So in terms of applying that to getting to know ourselves, or any action we could take to increase our happiness, it's really important to ask ourselves, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. I think that's the best compass we can use in our lives, is the very simple notion of, how does that feel for me, right? And it's not going to feel the same for every single person. And so your friend might have a different preference, and that's totally fine. And I think it's important to acknowledge that that's okay, and to feel okay with pursuing whatever it is that feels good for us. And so, there are a number of ways that getting to know yourself can be done, right? You can spend time with your eyes closed, sort of in a more meditative space. You can spend time doing activities that feel good, right? There are numerous ways that we can get to know ourselves better, and therefore increase our likelihood for joy. Spending time with other people, uh, any number of things. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I think some of the things you touched on there, Sophia, are just so powerful to understand. And as you mentioned there, that everybody has a different response to certain things. So it's about finding out what's right for us, because what can make someone else happy may make us upset, or what can make us happy might make someone else sad. So it's just such an important time to realize that we're all different and we're all unique. And happiness is very much a personal experience that we have. It's we share happiness in a collective, but it's also a very, very personal experience. And to be able to navigate to that place and point in time can really, significantly transform people's lives when they realize that it's up to them to be happy. They're empowered with their own choice to be happy and to be healthy as well. And Sophia, I just wanted to ask a couple of different questions as we go along the way here. Now, we usually, for the format of this summit, we have questions that come out at the end, but we're getting an absolute flood of questions actually coming in. And I just wanted to ask some questions as we go here, because I really believe that this session, people are going to get a lot out of it if we're interacting with them as well. And so, if you're okay, one of the first comments that came through was quite interesting. That Sophia sounds so peaceful and relaxed. How do you stay like that throughout the day? Was one of the first questions coming through. So, have you got some insights as to, I guess, either how you stay in the state that you're in right now, or how other people can be? And sometimes we might get in a really good place and we may close our eyes or meditate and be really happy, and then something might show up for us and gets us a bit upset or angry or frustrated. So have you got some tips or some ways that we can sort of help to stay in that space once we actually can get to the happiness space that we're looking for?
Sure. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So for me personally, and I think this can be applied to anyone, there are some things that I know bring me joy that I sort of plan out in advance. And that could be any number of things in terms of what I eat and how I move my body. For me, it's very important to move in the morning. That sets me up for the rest of the day. And so, all of us may have something that we can do in the morning, that may set us up for a great day ahead, whether that's, taking time to express gratitude, or just read a quote in a book, whatever it is that makes our soul happy. And the other thing, and I think the most important thing that I do, is I practice what I've been preaching here so far, and that is, an acceptance and ability to really be okay with whatever might happen during the day, whatever might come up. And so if there's a point in time when there's an unpleasant feeling that comes up, I practice just being there with it and observing it, and sometimes reflecting on where it's coming from and what it might mean. And what's so powerful about that is that by focusing on what's really beneath the feeling, the physical sensation in my body, for example, I'm able to step away from the thoughts and the story that might be associated with that feeling that is really perpetuating it, right? So as I do that, I enable the feeling to just be a feeling and to pass, as most feelings do, right? When we think back to any sorts of emotions that we may have had in the past, we know that they pass, that some time goes by and we're okay again. And so we can help ourselves, in terms of spending time with our feelings this way by not adding to the length of time that they're here or the severity, right? Just by giving them a little glance and attention when they first come up.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and you raised some really good points, and everything in this conversation so far is really, really expansive in the way that we can look at our current state of health, as well as our state of happiness. And so we've got so many more questions coming in that I just want to share. But one of the next questions here is that positive thinking is great, but it doesn't seem to change things permanently for me. What else can I do? And you mentioned along there about it's when we can observe the space that we're in and things that are happening. It's great. We can get a lot of clarity around maybe some of the thoughts that are underlying and things that maybe even some of our beliefs that sit underneath why we experience what we do, the emotions that do come up and what we feel. For people who really try the positive thinking and try positive affirmations and really try and get themselves in that space as often as they can, but it doesn't seem to sort of hold it. It really is a temporary happiness and the underlying issues might still be there of negative emotions and feelings. What else can they do? What else can people do listening at home right now to be able to step forward into that space and feel like they've got some more continuity and really are shifting things in a bigger way?
That's a great question. Yes, positive thoughts are a great thing and something you can use to also create an experience. But what it's really about is the experience, about the feeling that you have, and less so about the thought. We can sit here, for example, for the next 10 minutes and tell ourselves lovely things about ourselves, and we will feel better. Will it be sustainable? That's uncertain, and that's because it's the feeling that's really important. And how we get to the feeling, the really embracing whatever it is that we're telling ourselves, is really by addressing anything that's clouding that, and that's what we've been talking a lot about so far today. Just feeling what's beneath that. So you can, for example, take the positive thought that you want to create, and you can reverse that, right? Because if there's a positive thought we want to create, then it's likely that the reverse of that is something that we don't quite embrace yet, that we don't quite feel as a part of us, as a part of who we are. And so if we reverse that and bring that to mind, and then feel what's beneath that, that will allow us to really have that experience that I'm referring to, that feeling, that may not feel good for a moment, right? But eventually what will happen as we feel that is, the cloud that's covering up this initial positive thought that you want to create, right? Such as I am brilliant, right? When we remove the cloudy layer of the reverse of that, what remains is I'm brilliant.
Right.
Right.
It's beautiful. And I know that we've certainly had some great conversations outside of this chat, but I really love how you bring to understand what's underneath things, and how you, certainly share about the thoughts and the perceptions that we have of the world, and even including some of the beliefs that exist for us and how that can actually show up as our reality. And we've certainly had some great conversations on the summit so far. I'm really looking forward to a lot more where we delve into even more in the mind and a lot of other emotional side of things and consciousness and all these great conversations that are now becoming a lot more mainstream. And I certainly enjoy spending some time in that space and discussing about how our thoughts and our perceptions and our beliefs can influence emotions that sharpen, whether it's a positive or negative emotion, like a happiness, or if it's a fear, or whatever it is that we may experience. There's a lot of things that we might believe that we've had beliefs for a very long time that can cause these emotions to be there. And I love how you just share that when we can be in that space and observe and we look at what's underlying there, we can observe some of the things that we believe that may cause our emotional responses to be there, and that can help us transition. And that kind of leads into a few different, a few more questions we've got here. We've got a great question from Celia here, who says, I struggle with chronic pain, and it seems to be hard to focus on the positives when the pain keeps reminding me it's there, and getting worse the older I get. How do I begin to change my focus to positive when the negative, which is the pain, is so obvious in every moment? It seems like a vicious circle. Sophia, do you have any insights there for Celia as to how she can maybe move from that negative space to more of that positive space?
Hi, Celia. I'm sorry that you're in pain. And what I can say is, it's really important to start where we are, wherever that is. And so it's not that we're trying to create anything positive, right? We're not trying to create happiness, really. Happiness is who we are. Happiness is how we were born. It's who we are. And part of that is addressing, again, what doesn't feel so good. And for you, that's pain right now. And, pain is a very interesting phenomenon because, there's a lot of work showing that pain has an emotional basis as well. Even depending on where it is in our body, there's sort of an emotional complement to that. And so if you can, maybe spend some time, giving that pain some attention, just focusing on it a bit. And pain, the word pain itself has such a negative connotation. And I know you've had it for a long time. But if at all possible, maybe there's another word we can find to refer to this experience that your body's having, that doesn't have this negative connotation to it. Um, and so, once we stop labeling it in this way that carries so much weight, and then give it a little bit of attention, a little bit of loving attention, along with, of course, all of the things that the things you might be doing medically and alternatively, I think would be a great benefit.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sophia and Celia. Hopefully that's helped. And of course, a lot of the other conversations that were happening this summit are about the many different other aspects of our life as well that can contribute towards helping with a state of pain that exists as well. Yeah, that's like eating the right food. We had a great chat this morning with Tyler Tolman about nutrition and understanding the foods that are good for us to support our system, to support our immune system, to support our biochemistry, to support even the way our brain works. Exercise, movement. We had a great chat this morning with Stu Middleton as well about how we actually look at the movement and how that can influence the way that things flow around our body, the energy, but also the interaction with many different spaces, even our mind. And it's really great to understand this concept of personalized health, which is what we're having this whole summit for, is that there's many, many different things that influence who we are and influence our current state of health. And so if we're suffering from pain, as Sophia so beautifully mentioned there, that there's a lot of different ways that we can perceive pain that may contribute towards the state of pain that we're in. There's also a lot of other factors that may contribute towards that, such as stress and a physical imbalance in our body's nutrition, and many, many other factors as well. So it's a great question, Celia, and we certainly hope this will be able to support you. And I really encourage you to listen to a lot of the other conversations this summit as well to get a really great perspective. If you've had chronic pain for a long time, we know quite extensively from the research now that there's a lot of different factors that are influencing a chronic pain state. The mind is certainly a big one, and happiness is certainly something, along with the other emotions of love and gratitude, that can be very, very helpful in overcoming a state of chronic pain. So thank you for your question. And Sophia, I'm just going to keep going with a few more questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Certainly coming through. You're a very popular speaker so far. That's for sure. Linda asks, what if someone is at a really low point in their life? What is something I can do to help them shift? So it sounds like Linda may be someone who works with people. What if they're there, and how can she, maybe us as health professionals or social workers, or even just family or friends that they're here to support, how can we help someone actually shift from a lower point to a more positive space of happiness?
That's a great question. I think this is important always, and especially when someone may be at what we consider a low point. And that is just to be there with that person. The most we can do for anyone, including ourselves, is to acknowledge ourselves, to acknowledge what we're going through, to really make the point, not necessarily even through our words, but just through being there, that what you're going through is valid. There's nothing wrong about what you're experiencing, and you certainly didn't do anything to cause this to happen. It's just a natural flow of life, and right now you're in a lower point, and that's okay. And I'm sorry that you're going through that, but I'm here for you. I think sometimes the simplest things that we overlook are the most powerful. And that's just being there with each other, and just letting each other know that whatever experience we're having is important and valid, and that we are doing the best we can always, always and in all ways. And I think that experience itself, for the person who's in a situation that may not be feeling so great, can work wonders, right? It encourages the feeling of acceptance, the feeling of optimism, perhaps, that hey, everything will be okay. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Sophia. Thank you. And Linda, hopefully that's helped answer a lot of the question there. And I can certainly echo what you say there, Sophia, and just sharing the fact that being with someone and helping them understand that whatever they're going through is great for them at that point in time, and it's really a healthy space for them to be in that exact moment in time. And there's going to be a transition. We're all on a journey. We'll go through highs and lows throughout our journey, but we all experience things for a reason. We all learn from all the experiences that we have. If we even perceive it as a negative and maybe in the mind state at the low point in our lives, that may be happening for a reason that we're not really aware of at that particular point in time. And if you talk to many people who are very, very happy, they've always had lots of challenges throughout their life, but they've seen them as opportunities. And when you can have people around you that are really supportive and helping you see that, then that's a really amazing space to be in, and helping you transition towards the high points again. So thank you again for your insights, Sophia. I'm enjoying this call a lot. So as obviously the listeners are too, we've got more coming in. So just on the questions too, we've got an opportunity to engage live with Sophia and myself, if you like, while we're on this call. You can go ahead and request to be a speaker. There's a little hand that you can click on if you'd like to join the actual Hangout itself and engage with us live. So please go ahead and raise your hand in the chat room if you'd like to join. And we're going to do that in a little bit coming up, but I'm just going to take a few more questions on the chat as we're going here. Julia asks, how do I maintain joy and happiness? I tend to get very serious and intense, which leads to tension, headaches, forgetting to exercise, and other problems. If you have some insights for us there in terms of maintaining joy and happiness.
So I wasn't sure if I heard you fully there, Matt, but it sounds like the question is that she's able to begin, but not to maintain?
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. So it's a question of, how do we continue with those behaviors or feelings that we may have endured at some point in time? And what I would say, and this is to echo a point I referenced earlier, and that is, those things that we enjoy are those things that we're likely to continue and repeat later on, right? When there's something we do, maybe we start a diet plan, right? We start a new way of eating, and that sort of wanes over time. Part of it is because we may be doing it in such a way that isn't sustainable, intrinsically, which means that it's just not something we enjoy. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel good. Why would we keep doing it, right? So finding ways as we change behaviors, as we change thoughts, to make things feel good in a natural way, not in a sort of forced way. I think is very helpful there. And if the question was about sustaining emotion rather than behavior, then I would say, as Matt said earlier, that life is a fluctuation of any range of pleasant to unpleasant to neutral things and emotions associated with those things, those events, those situations. And so there's really, someone might know, but I really don't think there's a way to sustain a particular emotion for a long period of time. But what we can sustain is our ability to always return our attention to that which feels more inherently good for us, right? And that's where spending time with ourselves and reflecting on our thoughts and redirecting our experience is, I think, the essence of what we can do as human beings.
That's beautiful, Sophia. So eloquently put. Thank you so much. And we've got some comments coming through from Linda, who answered questions saying, beautiful answer, thank you. And lots of positive things coming through. So, Sophia, I've just got some more questions here. Wendy asks or says, I'm grieving the loss of my mother and know it's important to have positive thoughts and be happy, and others seem to need me to be happy. But I need to work through this grief in an authentic way. How do I actively seek positivity and happiness while still honoring the grief process?
Thank you for your question, Wendy. I think this your question speaks to this idea again of starting where we are, And it sounds from your question like where you are right now is in a process of grief. And, you know, it doesn't matter how long this process is. It doesn't matter, you know, what other people may be expecting of you at this point in time. What matters is where you are at this point in time and what you need. Because the more that we're able to reflect on where we are emotionally and what our needs are in relation to that, the more able we are to be there for other people. So though it might seem right now that people expect or need you to be positive, you know, that's, I think, a symptom of their desire for you to be happy. And their desire is for you to be genuinely happy, not to kick the grief process to the curb and say, I'm happy, when you're not. And so I really encourage you to take the time, to take as much time as you need and in whatever way that you need, to experience this process. You know, and in so doing, you honor yourself and you honor your mother, your family, and everything that's important to you. So I think that's a really special thing that you can do for yourself.
Beautiful, Sophia. Thank you so much. And I know that some of the other things that have helped a lot of other people in time that we've certainly discussed before have been about just understanding that the person who has left this space is now in a better space, in a better place, and that if they were looking down on you right now, you know, what would be a message for them, you know, from them for you, and it's you know, it's going to be a message that they want you to be happy. They're extremely happy and ecstatic and very healthy where they are right now in that space and time, and that you know, where you are right now, they just want you to be happy and to celebrate the life that you had with them, not to be sad or upset. And so very much to honour the process of grieving, but be aware that, that everybody's in a great space and everybody just wants help and everything for everybody. Can also be something that we've discussed before, Sophia. It's quite helpful, and I found that some great advice that you shared with me in the past, so I thought I'd pass it on there too. So we're just going to jump to a couple more questions, Sophia. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. Julie asks, does this concept have anything to do with fight or flight? Sometimes when I get close to happiness, it makes me want to run, almost like I'm afraid to be happy. Is there anything you can suggest for this? Great question. Thank you, Julie.
That's a great question. So when we use the term fight or flight, usually we're referring to our stress response, right? This physiology that goes on in our body when we perceive something as stressful. And usually this happens in moments of when we fear our survival or our inability to survive, right? There's a predator and we need to either fight or flee the situation. As it relates to happiness, you know, I would ask you what you mean by that feeling that you have. I wonder if it is, you know, a feeling that you're experiencing in your body, or if it's sort of more of a thought process. And I ask that because I think, you know, in either sense, it might be helpful to focus on, you know, what is happening in your body at that time. Because any sort of physiological, you know, activity that's happening in our body is normal, right? Because that's what's happening. You know, it's when we attach some sort of meaning to it, like, oh, my heart is racing so quickly, and that must be a bad thing, that we may feel like running away from a certain feeling or situation. But inherently on its own, you know, if your heart rate is increasing a little bit, or you're beginning to perspire a little bit, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. So I hope that answered your question.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sophia. And I'm just going to switch gears here a little bit for a minute, and just to discuss, you know, I guess you being a positive psychologist and helping bring the message of happiness to us here today, which is just such a great message. And I thank you so much for being here, for joining us for this conversation. The world as it stands, we have so much pain, so much sickness, so much illness, you know, so much depression, and so many people that are unhappy in life. A lot of things we've associated with happiness, like money and success. There's so many people even in those situations that aren't happy. Where do you see things going in the world? Like we're at this point in time, it's in 2015 with epidemics of disease and problems everywhere globally. What hope do we have? Where does happiness fit into this transition period that we're going through with humanity? And what do you see coming in the future? What sort of things can we be mindful of or aware of to help with this transition?
I think the most important thing is to realize that, firstly, that it takes courage to look at ourselves and to be with ourselves, and to even be curious about how do we increase our happiness. It's a very courageous thing to do. And it's also where everything begins, right? Because when each of us is able to do that, we start to interact in a different way, right? Both physically, emotionally, in all sorts of ways, and we're always impacting each other. And so, I think where the power really is in each of us individually, and thereafter in what happens as we come together. And the more of us that acknowledge that we really do have an innate power to improve our happiness, right? The more we sort of share that message with each other. And again, it's not anything that sometimes we have to say verbally. It's just, becomes a part of who you are, and it's something that people can see and share with. And there's enough happiness to go around for everyone, right? So it's a very beautiful thing. And given this profound link between happiness and health, I think I'm very optimistic about the future. I think the more that we each think and act in ways that are in accordance with our bodies, our minds, the more sort of seamless and efficient will be this process of getting to this place where we belong, of getting to optimal health and happiness. So that's sort of where I see us going in the near future.
That's beautiful, Sophia, and let's hope that that's the case. And I love how you share that. We're each having an individual experience, and that's really what we are at this stage in humanity's history. Is we're just a group of individuals that are together. We talk about countries and the globe, but really it's just a collective of individuals. There's a group of individuals that come together to form a little community, which forms a town and a state and a country and the world. We are all on this journey individually, but we're sharing it with so many people. And it's really important to understand that our happiness is certainly an internal thing that's driven, but it can be influenced by things around us. So in our community, for example, we may be influenced or affected by other people or other circumstances, other events that can influence our happiness levels, even though it's an internal journey. Have you got some tips, Sophia, for us in, I guess, thinking more of a very tangible way? Our big picture global health and happiness quest is certainly one that we share, and I'm very excited about working towards that over the coming years and decades. But is there anything tangible that people can start to understand, from a personal health aspect? What do we need to consider that influences our happiness? Whether it's the people that we hang out with, or the jobs that we do, or is it the place that we live in, and the foods that we eat, and all these other things. What sort of things should we be considering when it comes to our personal happiness?
That's a great question, Matt. And I would say the factors that influence our happiness are everything that you can think of. Everything, if you look around you in the space that you are in right now, everything that you see, everything that you hear, everything that you feel is something that's influencing your health and happiness. And, excuse me.
And some of the, sorry to jump in on you there, some of the things we've spoken about and we'll be speaking about this week that maybe you could share a little bit of insight in, if that's okay. We've got some amazing conversations on things about food, about social interactions, about the natural talents we even have, and maybe we're stuck in a job as an accountant, and we're really naturally a musician, and it's very difficult maybe for us to be happy if we're sitting behind a computer doing accountancy work when we should be out playing songs and singing and painting, or maybe vice versa. We're trying to paint and trying to make lots of money painting and not selling anything, but we should be inside doing things that we're very logical and very organized, that gives us a lot of a lot of dopamine release and a lot of feel-good hormones that excite us and continue to drive us. So just some I guess, some understandings from that. And I know that we've had, again, a lot of great conversations about personalized health and about epigenetics as well. Are there any insights from sort of those epigenetics that you can sort of give to us that we want to be mindful of when it comes to us being happy?
Yes. Yeah. So, in any process where we reflect on ourselves, we can reflect on what we do and how we relate to ourselves. And part of that, one of the things you just touched on is, what do we spend most of our time doing? Usually that's some sort of work that we do. And so, what is it that we're doing for work, and how does it feel for us? How does it feel for us in terms of the environment we're spending our time in while we're working, the individuals we're spending our time with, and the sorts of tasks, the sorts of activities that we're doing as part of our work. Um, and and in that regard, I think it's really important that as much as we can, we choose to spend our time doing those things that feel natural to us. And there's a lot of research on what psychologists refer to as character strengths. And character strengths can be a number of things. One of your character strengths, for example, might be optimism. And what research shows is that the more that we use our strengths, uh, the more likely we are to be happy. And not only that, but the more we use these strengths, these things that we're naturally good at, that we don't have to try very hard to do, that just sort of, are an inherent part of how we function, the more we use those things or do those things in new ways, so in a variety of ways, the more likely we are to be happy. So it's important to be aware of those things that we're good at, that make us feel good when we're doing them. Because, if we have an option, why not spend our time doing those sorts of things? And thereby also improving our happiness, right? It's a win-win. And so, how we spend our time in terms of work is an example. We can, of course, also look at how we move our bodies, right? A lot of the research I conducted was on, health behaviors and things that we can do to improve our health and happiness by way of how we move our body, whether we move our body. And so it's really important in that regard. We can, again, reflect on, what feels good for us, what feels good for our body. And there are other tools that can definitely help us get to know this if our self-reflection feels a little incomplete. But generally, what feels good to me? Sometimes we want results, and we do things to be able to get to those results as fast as we can. CrossFit comes to mind at the moment. And, it's important to just take a look, does this feel good for me when I do it? How do I feel when I'm done? Do I want to do this again, right? When we ask ourselves whether this is something we want to do again, that really reveals to us whether this is something that we enjoy doing, right? So, maybe there's an activity that feels good specifically for you. Maybe you're a nature lover, and so maybe going on a little hike on a trail nearby is something that would get you to move your body in a way that you can maintain it over time, relative to someone else who can run on the treadmill for days and days. And that's something that they can do. But there's a lot of variability in what feels good for us and is therefore sustainable in terms of movement, in terms of work-related activities, in terms of our physical environment, in terms of what we're ingesting into our bodies. So we can talk for a long time about this. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sophia. And I guess one of the most solid points that you've talked about this whole time is just the ability to observe what's really good for you and how it feels, and not judge so much. And that really is one of the biggest things, when you're referring to happiness, is that everybody is so different. And again, this is a personalized health summit. We talk about, the same exercise. If everybody in the world did the same exercise, some people would love it and they'd have the most amazing time, get the most amazing results. Other people would probably end up with back problems or knee problems and issues. Other people would be really bored. Other people would think it's the most amazing thing, to do the same routine every single day. We all respond so differently to everything. And so when we can observe what we like rather than judge and think of ourselves as, you know, why did our friends do this and they loved it and I felt really bad, or I got injured, or I didn't get a good result from doing this exercise, or I tried this diet and other people lost weight and I didn't, or yeah, I put on weight and other people lost weight, or there's so many different circumstances in life where we often fall back into that pattern of wanting to judge ourselves. And it reminds me of one of the quotes from Einstein, that if a fish went around judging itself by its ability to climb a tree, it would spend its whole life thinking it was stupid. And it really is just such a great way to understand, like in a very, very common sense manner, that you know, how could we possibly be expecting to be doing the same things as other people, because we're completely different to them. And yeah, whether it's the work that we do, if someone was more successful at doing sales than us, or if someone was more efficient at writing than us and produced things in a quicker manner, if someone survived off more or less sleep than us, or was able to eat these foods and be slim versus look at these foods and feel like we put on weight, that we're constantly just judging ourselves against these other people in our lives or circumstances or events, when actually it's all about that internal journey that you're on, as you've so eloquently described today. Is that it's about us, it's about reflecting on where we're at and observing who we are and what we're enjoying and everything that's right for us, so that we can actually experience that state of happiness when we're not trying to constantly compare ourselves to other people. And that's really just such a great point that I want to highlight again, that you've really brought throughout this whole conversation. That's really been fascinating. So we've got so many more questions here, Sophia, but I think we're probably going to be here all night. Otherwise, we're probably running out of time, unfortunately, for everybody. But thank you so much for all your questions that have come in, guys. And yeah, feel free to keep the questions coming as you need to. But we may have to keep on moving for this evening. I just wanted to take the time, Sophia, to say thank you so much for joining us here. I know that you're very, very busy, and we love the work that you're up to. Yeah, a positive psychologist. I think the world, if we could clone you and work out a way, maybe one of the genetics talks we're having, we can work out how to clone you and spread you all over the world. But it's just we're so very grateful to have you here and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and sharing about happiness, because it's such an important point. And one of the big things that we're on about here with our mission is to make sure that we can get to a place of health and happiness. And those two go hand in hand, and there's many different ways that we look at things and approach things, but it really is understanding more about happiness, because otherwise why are we even on this planet in the first place? So Sophia, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I know that listeners got so much out of it, and we've just had a great question and answer session, engaging things, because that's the best way to learn for a lot of people. And it really is about how we can, this summit is about how people can actually take home a lot of methods and tips and techniques and tools that are help implement into their lives to change their current state of health. And I think you've just navigated so well through so many of those questions. So again, thank you so much, Sophia, for being here. Thank you, the listeners, for being here. This is absolutely amazing that there's so many people giving up their time to learn about their health and about their happiness. And we really appreciate you being here. Please take the time to join the Facebook page, where you'll find all the updates and all the reviews about all the speakers and the schedules and all the bonuses and the goodies. And also take the time to click the link on our YouTube channel, which is where all the replays from all these sessions will be. And if you click there and you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you get all the free video replays from all the sessions that we have. So thank you so much for all being here. Thank you again, Sophia. And
thank you, Matt, for all your wonderful work.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all again tomorrow on this amazing Personalised Health Summit 2015. Thank you so much and good night.